Welcome to GRE Snack, snackable episodes on the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and most GRE prep wastes your time by treating every topic as the same. But Achievable takes a smarter approach that helps you focus on what you're most likely to see, what you don't know yet, and what will actually increase your score. This is also at a fraction of the cost of other test prep that is of similar quality to ours. So check it out by going to achievable.me and you can get a free trial there. If you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Candy Lee LaBalle with us from LaBalle Admissions. And Candy, I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. So thank you, Tyler. It's great to be here again. Yes, my name is Candy Lee LaBalle. I am an MBA admissions consultant. My company is called MBA Clarity because hopefully I bring a little clarity to the situation. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I'm also currently president of AGAP, which is the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, the only organization that's dedicated to the professionalism and ethics and transparency of admissions consulting. So yay, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So today, we're going to be talking about really just how to choose the right graduate admissions consultant. And I think that this is becoming more of a problem even recently, like we were talking about before we got this started, thanks to AI and whatever else. Like people can spin up a website pretty quickly, and there are a lot of people that essentially went to graduate school, and so therefore they think they know how to get you into graduate school when they're really working with the sample size of one. Well, I mean, let's start out by first talking about what does admissions consulting do, like in the
Mhm.
context of graduate school admissions,
Yeah.
and I feel like what, like who it's right for, who are the people that this is a good fit for them, and then we can go on to talking about discerning, what's going to be the right counselor for you and things like that.
Yes. Admission applying to a graduate admission. Now I'm going to refer mostly to MBA programs because most of our members in AGAC, myself included, we work with MBA applications. Of course, graduate admissions can be to a master's in architect, a master's in public policy, all sorts of things. So if I defer to saying MBA, it does apply to both, whether it's a graduate admissions or an MBA itself. So what an admissions consultant does is basically coach you through the process, right? So imagine you want to do an MBA, right? It can be
Mhm.
overwhelming. Questions from, do I actually need an MBA? Is it the right time in my life for an MBA? What kind of MBA do I need? Where do I want to do an MBA? Do I want to do an MBA in the US, in the EU? If I want to be in the US, what type of school? I've heard of M7. What is that? Should I be applying to an M7? What do I need out of the process, right? So the sort of all the preliminary stuff up into getting to the point of actually applying, a graduate admission consultant would help you with that, would help you start looking at some of those questions, right? And then once, let's say, okay, yeah, I've decided I'm applying for an MBA, I want to apply to, I don't know, 8 different schools in the US and a couple of schools in Europe, then the job of the admissions consultant is to help you do that in a way that's not only effective and supportive, but helps you really be able to shine, right? So if you're applying
Mhm.
to a school, let's say a Harvard Business School, or you're applying to London Business School, each school has a different thing they're looking for. They have different cultures, there's a different fit. You need to know who you are and what are your values and what are your strengths and what are your talents and what are your goals, so that you can then make a pitch to that particular school, right? And be able to show
Right.
how to fit within that. So an MBA admissions consultant for the most part would initially start out having a very deep conversation with you. Tell me about yourself. What are you doing? Where'd you go to university? Why'd you go to that university? Why'd you study that? Really? Then how did you get from that into this job that you're doing? What do you like about your job? What do you want to do? So it's just a lot of digging and picking and questions and background information to kind of help that applicant kind of shift and kind of identify the right schools for them, and then how to actually present their application to those schools. Once you get past that kind of like process, then there's just a lot of execution. Okay, you have essays to write. Let's talk about the essays. This essay question is asking you what matters most and why, or it's asking what makes you unique, or what makes you feel alive, or why do you want an MBA, or what is your aspirations. Let's talk about it. And so we'll start having
Hmm.
conversations about that. Again, trying to figure out what is the answer? What do you care about? And help you to then brainstorm your answers and figure out what's the story I really want to tell. Then there's parts of it that are pure editing. Let's say you've gotten that. Okay, I know what I want to say. I know where I'm applying. I'm writing. Some of it might be pure editing. So sometimes the admission consultant might read the essay and say, wow, I have no idea what these 60 words even mean. Let's talk about it. What are you trying to say here? So sometimes there's an
Hmm.
editing part as well. To apply to these schools, you need to choose recommenders. We can help you decide who's the right recommender. There's a giant myth that we've all heard. Oh, I need to ask the CEO. I need to ask the top person in my firm. Oh no,
Hmm.
I need to ask Bob. I worked with him 1 week 3 years ago, but he went to Harvard. So clearly he's got to be the right person. So helping you through that process, figuring out actually who is the best recommender, right?
Hmm.
And lots of other things, like helping you figure out like what kind of transcripts do you need to upload, what kind of tests do you need to take through interview, through everything. Really, a good admissions consultant will do everything from zero to admit.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, the next sort of, again, we're setting the stage here. The next follow-up question is just like, why do people hire admissions consultants, or why should they? Like, what is what types of applicants are going to benefit the most from it, or what are the
Yeah,
common areas that people need help with?
that I think the so no admission. So one thing is no admission consulting can guarantee you admin, right? I can't say to someone,
Yeah.
work with me, and I'm going to get you into Kellogg. Got you covered. You're going to get into Kellogg, no problem. If you work with me or INSEAD or whatever school, we can't do that. But we do know the process very well. We know what to expect. We know how to help people. We're going to increase your odds in the sense that you're not going to make a mistake. If a question is
Hmm.
asking a question, there's often a tendency like, I need to impress as much as possible, right? I have a 500-word question that's asking about my goals, but first I want to tell them how great I am. I was the best and I did this and I did this. Our job is to be like, well, don't do that. That's literally not the question. So having a consultant will help you do the process better so you don't make
Hmm.
mistakes. We help you do the process faster because we've done hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. So we know there's a question inside the recommendation form. When you choose your recommender, there's a question that says, do you waive the right to see this recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Every admissions consultant, myself included, I guarantee we get dozens of questions, but it's so silly and so dumb. But for an applicant, they're like, oh, what do I do? What does it mean? Google. Your admissions consultant can answer that question in literally 10 seconds. Waive and move on.
Right.
So you're going to save time. You're going to have a higher chance of being admitted because you're not going to make mistakes. You're going to have a better understanding of who you are, where you're applying. So there's a lot of reasons that make sense. You don't need it, and I would be lying if I say that you have to have an admission consultant because that is not true.
Hmm.
Many people apply without one and they get in just fine. So it is not necessary. There is information out there. There's a lot of blogs. There's a lot of the schools themselves. A lot of schools, Berkeley does an amazing MBA application boot camp. Yale as well does one. You don't need one, but it's definitely it's a help. It's a big. I don't know if you're going to be doing elite sports, you might want to hire a coach, and that's the idea. The coach is
Right.
going to take you to the next level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that kind of already answered the question I was going to ask, which is like, how can people determine whether they need help? I think, it's going to be case by case, but it's basically, like you said, if you want insight into like essentially all the learnings that you've gotten from the many years that you've done this, and to use that to
Mhm.
help you get to the next level, I think that's where you'd want one of these people. And
Yeah,
so okay, go
definitely.
ahead.
We definitely have a deep knowledge. If you were, like, for example, in AGAC, one of the benefits of belonging to AGAC is there's constant learning. We visit schools, we do interviews with admissions directors. We're so embedded in what's happening in the programs, we know what's going on, and that helps us. I was just thinking, a client of mine wrote to me a couple weeks ago. He's starting at Darden and he's over the moon. And I had forgotten this because we've been working together for a year and a half. He's Candy. I would have never thought about Darden had you not told me about it. And I was thinking about it. I was like, because it's the best, most perfect MBA in the world for you, right? And so
Hmm.
it's kind of that stuff. Sometimes we bring things onto the table that an applicant has never considered. On the other hand, I've had cases that I'm thinking of one guy in particular who came to me and he had his list of schools and he was very humble in them. And I remember saying to him, like, why are you not applying to Harvard? It's everything you're saying makes me think you'd fit the culture, you'd fit the, and this is, oh, but where I come from, my like it would have never occurred to him to apply to Harvard, right? He did, and he went, which is why this is a great story. But again, that's something, another thing a coach is doing. They help you think maybe beyond what you're already thinking about, right? Push your,
Yeah, and I think you're already kind of getting what you're starting to do already is lay out some of the stuff in my next question, right? Which is, when you're choosing the right graduate admissions consultant, I think it's important. Let's talk about what does a good consultant look? What are the things that they do? What are the things that and then like after what they look like and what they do, I'd love to then talk about how you can try to discern that from their website or from talking to them or from their reviews to see if this person you're considering does those things. But let's start first with this. What's good consulting?
what, I'm sorry, what's a good consultant?
Yeah. What makes a good consultant?
Okay. So I've always thought about it this way, that a good consultant has to have the head and the heart, right? So by head, I mean they have to know what they're doing. They have to have experience. They have to know what is the MBA experience about, what are the different programs about, what's required to apply, experience with different schools, experience with different applicants, experience with different scenarios, right? And that knowledge comes from commitment to, if you belong to AGAP, you attend a lot of these events. So being able to answer all the questions, to come to the table and be like, okay, here's your strategy, here's what you need to do, here's what you should think about, right? But I also think it's very important to have the heart. And the reason I say that is because applying to an MBA, it sounds, oh, I'm just going to apply to this program, blah, blah, blah. The reality is it's very emotional. A lot of these schools
Mhm.
are asking questions that make you dig deep inside of who you are, of what you care about. Feelings come up, sometimes imposter syndrome, sometimes different feelings, competitive. Oh my God, my brother went to that school. I have to go there, and it's imperative that I go there. Or so there's all these emotional things that are happening as well as you apply. I would say 90% of my applicants over the years, usually about 3 months in the process, I'll get a call or an email or WhatsApp where they're saying, oh my God, this is exhausting. This is emotionally exhausting, because it is. So I think a good consultant should also take that into account. There is an emotional side there. The applicant has to be respected, they have to be listened to. It's their project in the end. You have to let them drive the truck in the end, and just being caring to a degree. So I think that head and heart is really important in my opinion. Now that I definitely know there's clients or applicants out there who prefer more of a head approach. Just tell me what to
Mhm.
do. Drill sergeant, boom, and that's great. You need to know yourself. And that's what you're talking about it before, like how do you get to know? You have an opening phone call with them. You do some research, have a phone call with them and find out what's their style. But I would
Mhm.
say head and heart. And as far, like I said, as far as the head, where do you get that? Some people have it because they've worked in admissions before, and so they've got some degree.
Mhm.
Some of them, like myself, have just been doing it for years, and I'm just very committed to the process. Members of AGAC are very committed to the process, to learning as much as we can. Right now, we are at AGAC, we're doing something called Summer with the Schools. This means every week in July, we have 2 to 3 different sessions with only our members and the admissions representative of a top school. It's closed to social media. It's a private. Why is it that way? So we can really discuss. Listen, Bob, in your application, you're asking this. Do you realize what that makes, how that if impacts applicants? Or we're able to
Mhm.
ask them questions that maybe they would not be so willing to answer publicly, right? In order that we can then better help applicants find the right program and apply in a better way. So making sure your consultant is actively involved in learning and engaging is really important.
Yeah, I mean, I guess other than seeing if they're an AGAC, what are some ways that you can try and figure out whether your consultant is, engaged in the conversations and like trying to learn as much as they can?
Yeah. First of all, I'll say before we get anyone that calls me out, and again, because I believe in ethics and transparency, your consultant does not have to be an AGAC to be a good consultant. There are many consultants who
Yeah,
are not
yeah.
AGAC members who actually are people I absolutely idolize in the industry. They're not members for whatever reason, and hey, we're working on it. Maybe we can bring them in. I don't know, but so that's not necessary. But I would think first do some research, right? So let's say you want to hire someone, start looking around, googling around. You start looking, you're going to come across Poets and Quants, you're going to come across Reddit, GMAT Club. Start looking at some of the names, kind of listening to what they're saying, start following a little bit of their information. A lot of consulting firms have blogs and YouTubes and videos. Others don't. I know one of my favorite consultants in the world doesn't, she has zero presence in social media, but she's one of the best, right? But you can actually go and start looking and see how they're interacting. Look at how some of the things they're saying. Does this appeal to you? If you come from a world where the MBA is common, MBB, McKinsey or Bain, BCG, Goldman Sachs, a lot of tech firms, probably there's people around you at MBAs, see if they've worked with anyone, talk to them, start getting some references, and then start setting up phone calls. So pretty much I think every admissions consultant will offer some sort of introductory call, and go ahead and set some up and go in with some questions. Some questions would be, for example, I've got a little list of questions here. Hold on. Things like, how long have you been doing this? How many people have you worked with over the years? Who is going to do my application, right? I'm talking to you. Are you my consultant, or is there someone else in the process, right? It's not bad if there's someone else, but you as the applicant, you need to know who's working on my stuff. Have you worked with applicants like me? I'm super non-traditional, or I'm very traditional, right? How would you help me position myself? What makes you different from other consultants? What kind of offers do you have? By offers, in general, there's three types. School consultants that do school only. You hire me for a school package. You hire me to work on one school or two schools or 10 schools. Others work on hours. I don't work by packages. You hire me for 5 hours and we use those for whatever you need. And then others do a mix. So finding out what kind of offers they do, how do they communicate with you? So there's a lot of things you can figure out in that phone call to kind of make a connection, right? And that really is kind of
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. One of the things that I also want to dig in on, though, is just like the actual work that the consultant's going to be doing, right? Like, what
Mhm.
are the ways that you can kind of distinguish an admissions consultant from somebody who's just like a good editor and maybe knows the process? Like, I think it's because you want that strategic insight.
Yeah. I think that comes down to the experience and time, right? Everyone starts somewhere. I remember very well my very first client. We all start somewhere, but with time and experience, you start building that strategy, right? And especially when we're looking at the price points, I would say the average price point for admissions consultants by the hour right now is anywhere from $350 an hour up to 500 average. There are some charging 900 an hour, and there's some that charge less, right? So if I'm going to pay someone who's charging $400, $500 an hour, I want to know that you've been doing this for several years. What am I paying you for,
Mhm,
right? So I think looking at those, how long have you been doing this? How many people have worked this? How do you stay up to date? And again, you're asking me, how do you figure that out? I would guess probably looking at what they're publishing on LinkedIn, what they're publishing in their blogs. Who are they talking to with the schools? What do they know? Are they sharing information about what's happening in the school? For example, yesterday, it might have been yesterday or today, Darden got a new dean, the very first female dean ever. To me, as an admission consultant, I'm over the moon. The person you work with should know this kind of news is happening, right? They should have knowledge about
mhm.
what's happening in the MBA world in general. And I think you can find that out probably just by looking at their blogs, talking to them a little bit. But again, people are just starting out. But I think if they're just starting out, maybe their prices should not be $500 an hour.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
me.
that makes sense. I mean, I think the other thing I wanted to also ask about is like, what kind of work should you be expecting from your consultant? Because I think, when we were in our kind of prep, we were talking about like, polishing work, which and then foundational work, and this kind of difference between the two, because I feel like a lot of admissions consultants probably are really just doing polishing work. Like, hey, go write your essay and then like I'll help you edit it,
Mm-hmm.
or give me your list of people you want recommendations from and I'll help you narrow it down, right? But what is the difference between the polishing work and the foundational work, and
Yeah.
what
Well,
what's
I,
what
I
makes
mean,
that
I wouldn't
important?
know. I don't know if a lot of them are doing that, because to me, the work of the admissions consultant is the foundational. Who are you? What do you want? What makes sense for you? What are your career goals? What schools then make sense? Oh, you've got some anomaly in your profile. Okay, something went wrong in your undergraduate admissions. Something happened here. Let's strategize. How do we overcome that? How can we then
Mhm.
sell that to a program so that they can see how resilient and strong? Like, that foundation, to me, that is the work. The polishing is part of it. Yes, I'm not going to advise my clients on how to build this great strategy and then be like, good luck with your grammar, see you later, or go use AI,
Well,
because
right.
that would not be appropriate. But if it's just grammar, then hire an English teacher.
I guess that was more my point is like everything you just said, where you were talking about, like, okay, what's important to you? Like, what are your career goals? Where do you want to go? That I feel like those are the things you should be looking for them to be asking you,
Yeah.
even when you're like doing like your sales call with them,
Yeah.
basically. If they're just sitting there and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm happy to do all this, again, polishing work, they're not asking you like they're not fundamentally like helping you figure out what you even want to do. Yes, I'm sure there are some people that are like very focused on I want to go to a certain school, but oftentimes, like you said, there's a lot more to the world than just, the M7 or whatever it is that you really want to do. And
Yeah.
you should still explore that kind of foundational conversation. But I mean,
Yeah.
that to me is like something I would look for personally, what you just described.
Yeah, I think in those introductory calls, that might be some of the stuff you might want to talk about. I am a super traditional candidate. What would you suggest? This is where I went to
Mhm.
school. So, for example, when I do an intake call, before they ask me questions, I'm asking them questions. Oh, where'd you go to university? Why'd you go there? How was your GPA? Oh, why are you working here? What do you love about that? Oh, you do that? What's great about it? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And it's getting that kind of foundational information out. So yeah, I think you're definitely right. That's the kind of stuff you'd want to hear from, because it's not, if it were just about editing and grammar, we probably could just hand it over to AI, right?
Right.
But AI grammar and style becomes an issue, because when a school has a question like, oh, sorry, LBS, I'll pick on you. What makes you unique? 200 words. Who can, you know how hard it is to write to? I am an author. I have published books. I've been a writer for 20 years. 200 words is extremely difficult to do if you are not a writer.
Mhm.
So there definitely is an editorial part where we can help them figure out maybe the sentence, maybe we need to drop that completely. Or I know you love this idea, but in writing we have a phrase called kill your darlings. So the editing, I think, is important, but it's definitely not the primary part by any
Yeah.
stretch of the imagination. The primary part is figuring out the strategy, what makes sense, how to sell yourself, how to understand what the schools are looking for, how to choose the right recommender. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually leads really nicely into kind of some other questions that I had. When it comes to what makes a good consultant, I mean, I think it's important that they're willing to give you direct feedback, right? And I also think it's important that they're willing to be honest with you. But also, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, it could go too far and people could be
Yeah.
rude, for lack of a better word, or just to kind of make you feel bad, right? And like you said, the
Yeah.
application season's really stressful.
It's
So
stressful.
when it comes to the relationship between you and your consultant, like what makes a good consultant? And then also, how can you discern this in your calls with them?
Yeah, I think if we're still in the discerning in the calls situation, I think if a consultant on the phone call tells you, like, oh, absolutely, yeah, Harvard, you'd be great, with knowing next to nothing about you, like Harvard, and I can usually look at someone's profile, their resume, talk to them for minutes, and I can make a pretty fair judgment if they would make it at a T15 or certain M7. But Harvard and Stanford are different beasts. You need different
Right.
things. You need certain traits that might not be obvious in the profile we're looking at, or maybe it's obvious that they're not there. So I think someone who can tell you, we'll get you in there, or yeah, I can help you apply there. Sure, I can help anyone apply to Harvard or Stanford. Would I? No, if you have, no, I wouldn't. If you have absolutely zero, impossible, no way, waste of time, I probably am not going to do that. I think being able to say that, I've definitely told people, well, fine, I won't work with you. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. Find someone that makes you happy. But so sometimes telling you things that maybe you want to hear. But also on the other hand, so I had in AGAP, we have a WhatsApp group and we share a lot, and I have friends, and a friend wrote to me, and a client had come to her, and this person was upset because he worked at a firm. It wasn't an MBB, it was one of the other ones, Deloitte, EY, it was something like that. And the consultant had basically told him, they're working in that firm with your promotion level, which is not impressive, you'll never ever get into Harvard, which is just like the kind of blanket statement that is not possible to make, right? People get
Mhm.
into Harvard from EY every freaking year. Like
Mhm.
that has nothing to do with it, right? I think anyone who makes a blanket statement like that in the initial call, it'd be hard because it's hard to really know people that well. You get to know them to a degree and you've got your knowledge. I can do a lot based on my knowledge already, but I usually tell most people, in order to fully evaluate you for one of these schools, I'm going to need to have more data, right?
Yeah.
So that would be
Yeah, I
one
think
of
that's a good segue.
things you want to hear, and then things people
Mhm.
saying that are maybe just too harsh. Once you're in the relationship, it becomes different. So I get into my relationship with my clients, and by that point, with our most admissions consultants, will start with some sort of initial getting to know you session, whether it's part of an hourly package, whether it's part of a school package, whether it's something else. And these sessions tend to meet everyone that I know who does it, they tend to be deep. Like we tend to go really,
Right.
we're poking in there, and then we can make some judgment calls based on that. But you still have to be willing to push back if they need to be pushed back against, right? We have a lot of debates about AI, of course, what AI can do. And I was just thinking about one of my clients to Harvard, I think it was last year or the year before, and there's an essay about curiosity, and this client wanted to write about something that was very important to him. It was a very important thing in his life, and
Mhm.
again, emotion, all these things. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And he's worked on the essay, working on the essay, and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm questions. And after probably version 10, I was just like, this is just never going to work. As much as I push him, he's never getting to the core. The essay is not showing who he is, and I don't know if it's because it
Mhm.
just can't, or he doesn't. I couldn't, and I had to call him up and say, I'm really sorry, I want you to sit down, but we need to think about another topic. There were other topics. Again, I had talked to him a million times, so I knew other topics, and he was not happy. He was very angry with me, but he saw the point in the end and did change the essay. And I don't know if AI would do that. I feel like AI would just keep, oh, let's edit it more. Oh, it's really lovely. I
Mhm.
don't, knowing him, knowing his profile, knowing all his other essays, knowing his data form, knowing Harvard, like I knew it just wasn't getting there. It wasn't a
Mhm.
bad essay, but it wasn't letting this person shine in the way that I knew he could shine. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure
Right.
AI could do that, nor a bad consultant could do that. I don't know. So
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think it's really important to be honest, and it also ties into like ethics a little bit too. Like you
mm,
want to basically give people the best shot that they can. I think maybe that's actually a nice sort of segue into maybe the opposite of things. Or like, what are some red flags to look out for on the other side? Like, back to ethics. If a consultant's saying, "Oh, we'll write your essays for you," like that's obviously a red flag. But what are like some of the subtler things that you should be looking
yeah.
out for?
Some of the very basic things, and I think this goes back to the very first call, is guaranteeing admission to an elite program.
Mhm.
That's just not possible. It's not possible to guarantee admission to any program. I can't say I guarantee I'm going to get you into an M7, or I guarantee I'm going to get you into the University of whatever South Dakota's MB. I can't say that because I don't control that. Only admissions
Mhm.
controls that, right? We could probably say I guarantee you're going to get in somewhere on your list, and that's more than likely, right? But I think this guarantee towards an elite school is definitely a red flag. And then what does admissions care about, right? So admissions is building an MBA class of talented people who are going to be leaders in the world. Most schools have mission statements, and within most of the mission statements, there is something along the lines of improving business, improving society, using business to foster some good in the world. It's mostly in most of the mission statements, right? So they're looking to build a classroom of dynamic people who are smart, who are ambitious, but who are also can help support each other, can help drive a dynamic discussion, right? How do they figure that
Hmm.
out? Their authenticity. So this is a word we hear all the time. I think there's not a single MBA admissions employee who does not use the word authenticity dozens of times a day. What are you looking for? Authenticity. What is authenticity? The truth. Who are you? What kind of person are you? You're a risk taker. You're the social one. You're the loyal person. I don't know who you are as a person, but they're looking for this authenticity. So if someone else is writing your essays, the authenticity is gone. Okay,
Right.
yes,
Or
I
if they're saying
story
AI can write your
right.
essay,
What's that?
or if they're saying AI can write your essay.
Yeah, and you can plug in your story to AI, and you can plug in your story, and they can ghostwrite, but you're losing that authentic voice, right? The authentic way how
Hmm.
you think, the way you present things, which might not always make sense logically. Sometimes we present ourselves in a way that doesn't make sense to anyone else in the world, but it makes sense to us,
Hmm.
and it makes sense in the story. So if you're farming that out, it might be gone. So I haven't had, we're still early days with AI. I haven't had a lot of clients through the applications into AI post working on them, right? But I've had a lot of experience of working with a client over months, helping them find their stories, develop their stories, and then they show it to their uncle who went to Chicago Booth when it wasn't called Booth, it was called Chicago 15 years ago. And the uncle's, you shouldn't be talking about that thing. You're showing weakness. And then they start getting this advice that like starts removing the authenticity, right?
Hmm.
Happens a lot with my consulting clients. They'll show it to the partner. Hey, partner friend, take a look. Oh no, you can't say X, Y, and Z. That might have been true 15 years ago when they did the MBA. It was a different world. They weren't looking for empathy and integrity and emotional intelligence. They are looking for those things now, right? So that to me is where the authenticity will often get chipped away by people who have a very good heart and who mean well. But yeah, offering to write your essay is outsourcing the work. I've definitely heard of admissions consultants who are outsourcing it to AI and then passing it back to the applicant. Not cool, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm answering
Yeah.
your question. I
That's
hope
that's a good list of things. I mean, I think that it's like good things to follow up on with the consult. Like, what's your editing process? Like, do you use AI? How do you use AI? I mean, that's not to say that using AI is bad. I mean, I think there are definitely parts where AI can be genuinely useful in the process. It's just
absolutely.
you want to make sure that you're not hiring somebody to plug your stuff into the same AIs that you could plug it into.
Yeah, because what happens is that it can be used obviously very powerfully, and it's getting more powerful all the time to refine ideas, to pull thoughts out, to do many different ways. But one of the, we were at our AGAT conference last May, and a big topic, of course, was AI. And we had 40 admissions consultants from around the world. I think we had 32 admissions directors, including the top 20 schools in the world. And the comment was, yeah, AI, it's part of us. It is part of who we are. It's part of our programs. It's part of our life. What still matters is judgment, right? What still
Hmm.
matters is judgment. And what are you? A school has a question such as what matters most to you and why. What's the biggest commitment you've made, or even what is your goal? And you're sourcing that out to AI. Where's the judgment? You got to bring your judgment back into it. I think that's where the authenticity is getting lost. But definitely, it's. I think it's just going to only get more interesting, the uses of AI in the future. We just saw Kellogg has just announced that they're reducing to one essay, a goals essay of
Oh, wow.
550 words, but five video questions. So lots of schools have
Mm.
used video questions in the past. INSEAD has been using video questions for years. And it's interesting because video does require like in the moment responses.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah. I think it's just a reaction to like AI is really good at writing, but you definitely are not going to use AI to do a video of you. That'd be crazy. Or maybe someone has, but
They actually, so most of the schools are using Kira Talent. It's a platform for the videos. And there's a question that will appear, and they'll often have 30 to 45, even 60 seconds to prepare. And at least one school has reported that they've caught people punching the questions into AI and then speaking it. So they reduced it from the 60 seconds to 5 seconds. Here's your question, 5 seconds. So,
oh, wow. Oh,
and I
that's
won't
pretty
call it so
crazy.
people know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Great. And yeah, again, it's not like AI is disqualifying. There are good uses of AI in admissions consulting, but these are things that you deserve to know when you're trying to determine the right consultant for you. And I think that kind of, going on to that part of it, how for researching and vetting, right? Once you decide that you want a graduate admissions consultant, how do you recommend people start the research process and then vet the people that they find, right? Like, I think that probably very similar to the colleges themselves, there's probably like a top seven or top 10 that just get a lot of attention through brand recognition. But
Yeah.
what should people do to try and find the right consultant for them?
I think it is very, it's definitely a very tough one. When you go to the different forums and the Reddits and the whatnot, it is, you do see the same people there again and again, and the big advertisers, quotes and quants is super important. But there's definitely the same companies appearing again and again in a lot of their articles. So if you're not part of that, I don't know, you're some guy in Paris who's working an admissions consultant and you're passionate about it, you're committed to it, and one is kind of hard to get to be known. So how do you vet them? Yeah, you can't just go to who's out there, because who's out there is going to be the people that have the biggest marketing
Hmm.
reach. Which is not to say they're bad. By no means at all am I implying that. Some of these people are just top. But I think if you wanted to go beyond that, you need to talk to them. You need to find out who is going to be your consultant. You need to find out things like turnaround time. What's the turnaround time? What are the processes? What's included? Are you going to give me a contract? I think asking for a contract to me is such an easy way to vet them, because any good
Mhm.
consultant should be willing to give you a contract, right? If they're not willing to give you
Yeah.
a contract, and then just continuing on with questions, trying to talk to people that they've worked with. Often people will come to me and say, "Can I speak to a prior client?" I do have hesitations about that because I'm based in Europe, where we are under some of the strictest privacy laws in the world. So I have to make sure that I've got the client's pure permission and certain things. Other people do it more freely. Of course, you can look at reviews that appear in places like Poets and Quants and whatnot, but then again, who leaves reviews? The happy clients. The unhappy clients don't leave reviews. So I think it's kind of tricky, but I think if you were really concerned, if you didn't get a good sense of a feeling after you did your research, after you did your call, start with a couple of hours and feel it out. I don't think that's great, because those couple of hours are important and probably, what's the word I'm looking for? Foundational,
Mhm.
but I guess you wouldn't get locked in.
But yeah, I guess like during
Yeah.
even just before those couple of hours, like in the intro call, like we've talked about, asking what their process is and asking like, what third party consultants they have, how they use AI, things like that. But then
Yeah.
also kind of looking for them to ask you, like, what are your goals and like those foundational questions. And, making sure they're not jerks, I guess, making sure the communication around setting up the call and stuff like that is good and that they're responsive and things like that. Those are all things that I would be thinking about going into an intro call. Is there anything that I missed that you think you should always be
Yeah.
asking or checking in on?
I think that's important, the style of work. Like when I do my introductory, when people contact me, I let them know directly that I'm a touchy feely. My clients refer to
Mhm.
me as being like their mom. I'm like going to be all up in your face, and I'm going to be emotional and be pushing you and doing all, which some people like and some people do not like, which is why I'm upfront about it. This is not the style you want, then don't call me, right? And often we'll figure that out
Mhm.
in initial calls as well, because as they're evaluating me, I'm evaluating them as well, thinking, yeah, I don't necessarily want to work with this person. This is going to be very complicated. But I'm also always thinking, if I decide I meet someone and I don't want to work with them, can I refer them? Like I don't leave people hanging. Also, oh, sorry, guy, good luck with you. So
Yeah.
I usually refer them to an AGAC member that I feel might be a good fit for them. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Tyler. Really, it's a
Oh, that's good.
complicated one. I guess it's like a lawyer or anything else. One of my friends right now is looking for a lawyer, and she's been showing us the process. This guy sent me a 300-word personalized response to all my questions, and this one sent me what seems like a pasted in email. I guess things like that. Are you being responded to as a
Mhm.
person or not?
Yeah, I think also just like a couple of like specific quick hit questions here. The first is, do you think it's important that the consultant has worked with the school that you're targeting or with applicants that are similar to your profile in the past? Like, is it like pretty typical for it to be like, oh, I've never had someone apply to Babson, but I've done
Yeah.
similar-ish schools and
I
I can
think
help.
I think a good consultant can adapt, but in general, probably if I was an applicant and my dream was to go to ISB in India, I probably would not
Mhm.
hire me. I've never worked with anyone who went to ISB. Could I probably figure it out?
Right.
Sure, I could probably figure it out. But yeah, so probably finding out what schools do they generally work with. Applicants similar to me, I do think that helps because there are like the very traditional. I am the private equity guy. I went to the top school. I was the captain of this, the very
Mhm.
traditional from consulting and from banking. And then there's the non traditional, and non traditional can be more complicated. So if you are non traditional, have you worked with a non traditional, like with this particular profile? Because they do demand certain things that maybe other applicants don't demand. Big or small, we didn't talk about that. So there's three types of mission. There's the really big firms that literally have hundreds
Mhm.
of people on staff, mid-size that might have 10 or 15, and then small, which is a sole operator like me. We are different. I think the bigger firms and the mid-size firms often will have a lot more resources. Here's our backlog, our library of 1,000 things, and we have a specialist interviewer who is specialized in this school, and we have a specialist for that. I think that's lovely and great. Other people don't have that. If you work with an independent like me, no, I don't have a team. I'm not going to bring on a
Mhm.
specialist in this or a specialist that. I have access. So if you are going to make with a sole operator, find out what their access is. Do they have a network? Do you have
Mhm.
support? In my case, I have AGAC. So if I do have something unusual, hey guys, I've got this person on waitlist at Ross, and this is the situation. Any intel whatsoever, and I've got 200 people I can reach out to for intel. Bigger firms might already have that in house. Those are different. How many people are you going to work with this year? I think is an important question.
Mhm.
You're working with 100, you're working with 10. Those could also play a role as well. I think another question is how often can we be in touch? And how do we stay in
Mhm.
touch? Do we stay in touch by email only, through a platform, through WhatsApp? Those could be some more questions to ask as well.
Yeah, no, those are all great questions. And I think also the other thing, you're leading me into some other, just you mentioned earlier, talking about like, hourly versus like full, just doing like just school. And that plays a lot into like, how you keep in touch and the communication style you're going to have. If it's hourly, it's probably going to be more like a lawyer where you want to keep your emails to a minimum. If it's by school, I would imagine you might be, firing emails back and forth all the time. And just, yeah, I guess just do you have any opinions on like the differences between those packages?
I would find out from the consultant. So what does your hourly package look like, and what does it include, right? So
Hmm.
different people do different things. I tend to not track anything that's going to take me less than 10 minutes. A
Hmm.
fast email, a final check on a resume. I'm not going to do that, but that's me. Other people might be more specific. It's going to be tracked this way. So finding out how they're tracked, what tracking system they use, whatever, that kind of thing. Just because it's an application, a full application, are there limits, right? Even my contract, I do for full application, I've got a certain, if we reach 40 hours, I can make a call and say, hey, it's time to reconsider this. But so, and
Right.
again, I think that's where contracts come in. Like, what is actually in the contract? Like, how do you track the hours? How specifically do you track the hours? How often am I billed? Am I billed beforehand? Am I billed afterhand? If it's a full school package, how many hours are included? How many meetings are included? And every organization does that and have their systems. And I'm not going to say one system is better than the other, but you ask those questions and find out how they work.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of it's just getting aligned on how you want the working relationship to go. I mean, I guess then as we start to wrap up here, um, one of the questions I have is just like when you're going, to find like the right consultant. And I feel like we've talked a lot about a lot of different things you should be considering. But what are the things you should be confident in before you're signing anything? Like, what are the, whether it's questions that you want answered, and whether it's like style and approach or relationships, or
I
yeah,
mean,
just
definitely
what are the
before
things that you want
you,
to be confident in?
yeah, the things before you turn over the money or make the payment. What are the scope of services? How
Hmm.
deep does it go? Are there limits on turnaround? Are there limits on edits? Are there hourly limits? Or there you can't call me on weekends or whatever it might be? Timing of turnaround. How long does it take before you send me something back? Privacy and confidentiality, I think, are extremely important to make sure that, because you're sharing a lot of very private information, you need to be sure that's being kept private. Again, like I said, in Europe, our laws are really hardcore there. But it also goes the other way. I think a contract should also require you, the applicant, to be confidential with my methods, or the methods that I'm sharing with you as well. Again, because there's this
Hmm.
trust there, right? Again, you need to be definitely, if you're working with a larger firm, who are you working with? Are you working with one consultant? Are you working with one counselor and then different people on different aspects? Again, one way is not better than the other. If you're working with a solo operator, are they in fact who you're working with? Or are they farming it out to AI, or, I don't know, to their cousin in Tennessee who needs some extra money? You should know what the expectations are, what you as the client are expected to do. For example,
Hmm.
I have certain expectations of my clients, which is to honesty, one thing, to meet certain deadlines, to share certain things with me, and they have expectations of me as well, what I need to be doing. And I think, again, communication, how are you going to stay in touch? Round one is the first week of September. For most of the world, not the US, I'm sorry, August is the time off. Everyone's on vacation, right? It becomes a very intense time for everyone involved. Applicants are struggling with family vacations, weddings, all this stuff happens in August. How often, and the consultant as well. How does that work? Can I stay in touch with you? Round two is the first week of January. Can we be in touch on Christmas Eve if I need you? Making sure you know that, because there's, again, different, and no one right way or one wrong way, but you should definitely know what the policy is there. So I think that would be some of the things you would need to know. Timelines, when are we going to do this first? What time can we expect? How does it work? We're working on one
Yeah.
school, then the next school, then the next. What's the method?
Yeah, I think that all makes a ton of sense. And then my last question for you is, where do organizations like AGAC play a role in this? And also, are there other organizations that you recommend people look at as well? Or even just, you mentioned poets and quants, things like that. But just like, what are the best, like, trusted sources of information?
I mean, the thing that about AGAC that is very important for applicants is that we exist to promote certain levels of ethics and we hold our members up to certain levels of ethics and certain levels of transparency. Our
Hmm.
members are not allowed to write essays, right? Our members are not
Right.
allowed to work both sides of the table. Oh, I'm an admissions consultant at ESA, but I'm also a consultant. I also work there, and I'm also things like that are just clashes of conflicts of interest. So in
Hmm.
general, you would know our members have, or at least are aware that these standards should exist and should be raised. On the other hand, our big thing is professional development from our conference. Like I said, we were at Duke in May. We had 32 school representatives, every single school from the top 20 schools in the world, 40 members. Our summer with the schools, we do a lot of other things. We do a lot of professional development. We have sessions where we're just working to each other. How do you deal with client stress? How do you deal with consultant burnout? So what are some of the best tools that you can use to make your work go smoother? So if you're with AGAC, you at least know someone who's consistently and constantly building up their skills and their abilities to be professional. I think a lot of the bigger organizations do that as well internally. I can think of an
Hmm.
organization like Menlo. Well, Menlo actually is a member as well, but they have a lot of internal training for their consultants. A lot of the bigger firms have internal training for their consultants, so you can't just pop over there and work there. So I think knowing I guess that could be a really good question coming down to it. How do you stay up to date on what's happening in the MBA admissions world? Could be a really good question.
Hmm.
But then we have independents. Like I said, we've got tons of sole operators. I can think of Hillary Schubach of Shine and Adam Marcus of MBA Guru and Petya Whitmore of my MBA Path. These are sole operators who are dedicated to this craft, who are obsessive about understanding, knowing, learning. Check out their blogs. I think that could be a good way. What I think personally, when I see a blog that just gives kind of half-ass information, just this is what, and then but call me for more detail. That to me is a red flag. If you're not willing to share
Mhm.
real data and real information, do you even have that real information? I don't know. I hope I'm being
Yeah,
helpful.
exactly.
These are hard questions. They really are.
No, I think that's good. I mean, again,
There's just not a certification process in the MBA admissions
mhm,
world the way there is in lawyers or in other professions where you have to do certain. It doesn't exist. So there have to be other
mhm.
ways to kind of figure out this information.
Yeah. And I think that's, this episode is going to be really helpful for people just for what they should be thinking about and how, you know, basically how they should approach the problem, but then also what are the good things you should want and what are the bad things you don't want. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, we could come up with between me and you, and I'll ask some of my colleagues, maybe a list of 10 questions and maybe going beyond the simplistic, how many clients do you work with? But like really getting in some nitty gritty, like what would be some powerful questions to ask?
I think that'd be great.
Because it's there also there's consultants that don't do any of this, that don't blog and they're still great. So it's like I
Mhm.
hate to say it's a blanket statement across anything. But yeah, go to AGAT.
Yeah.
That's
Well, again,
right in AGAT.
you can't give one size fits all advice, right? But I think you've given us a lot to think about what's important and what you should be considering. So that's great.
Perfect. Thank you, Tyler. You're always so great to talk to, and your questions are always so good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll take us out here. This has been GRE Snack, hosted by Tyler from Achievable. Has a great online GRE course, and you can try it for free at achievable.me to learn how it can help you get a higher score.